to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All members of the school board are present, except for Director Nellie Corman, who is excused absence, contacted us in advance, is not able to attend tonight. Our first item of business then is the approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Are there any additions, corrections, changes suggested? Then all those in favor of the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And it carries. The next item we have on our agenda then is our recognition of students, staff, and public. And we are very pleased to have performers from the Jefferson High School Theater Company presenting from Peter Pan, and they'll let us know a little bit more about what's upcoming here that we should be aware of and get on our calendar.
Thank you for letting us join you here today. My name is Rachel Swanton,
And my name's Kelsey Dornfeld.
and we are seniors from Thomas Jefferson High School. This coming week, we will be performing Peter Pan.
The dates are Friday, December 6th at 7 p.m., Saturday, December 7th at 1 and 7 p.m., and Sunday, December 8th at 3 p.m.
She's playing the part of Tiger Lily, and I'll be playing the part of Captain Hook. Some of our main characters were unable to join us here today because they are currently practicing with our flying machine. We're really excited about it because it'll enable us to give the illusion of flight during our shows.
We're also really excited about our 15-foot crocodile costume that we'll be using during the show.
Thank you for letting us come here today, and we hope you all join us in our adventure in Neverland.
Thank you so much. That's terrific. Looking forward to a crocodile and actual flight. That'll be great. So glad we can be entertaining production. Peter Pan with Jefferson Theater Company coming right up the week after our Thanksgiving break now. So it'll be starting next week. Our next item on our agenda for recognition of the Human Rights Day proclamation. And we do have a proclamation motion here. Is that on our agenda? Okay, please,
Sure.
Director Hibbs.
Resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves the attached proclamation recognizing December 10th, 2013 as Human Rights Day in the Bloomington Public Schools.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries. I'd like to read what we just passed then and make a presentation then to our representatives here with the Human Rights Commission, and our youth representative from the commission is here. Whereas the Bloomington Public Schools join our nation in recognizing December 10, 2013 as International Human Rights Day, and whereas Bloomington recognizes the importance of acknowledging the diversity that exists in our community as we strive for autonomous participation in our community affairs, and whereas the devastating impact of prejudice can be eliminated through the efforts of our schools and city in promoting human rights awareness, and whereas the Universal Declaration of Human Rights asserts all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, and whereas the designation of a special Human Rights Day serves to remind us that basic human rights must be made available to all people, therefore be it resolved, the Bloomington Board of Education, Independent School District Number 271, Bloomington, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim December 10, 2013 as Human Rights Day, and ask all residents to continue their efforts in making Bloomington a model for fair and equal rights for all persons. Dated this 25th day of November 2013 on approval of the Bloomington School Board, Timothy D. Culver, School Board Chairman, Bloomington Board of Education. And I would like to invite Dennis Kane to come forward and introduce us to his guests to accept the proclamation.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Chairman Culver and school board members, Superintendent Fujitaki, cabinet members, and all the audience here tonight, as well as those that are at home. It is our pleasure. I am accompanied this evening to receive this proclamation. Nawag Singhi is a youth commissioner that has been recently appointed by the city council and the mayor, along with one other individual, one of his classmates. And together we are happy to participate in this proclamation. And Human Rights Day is there particularly because it is an opportunity for us to reflect on the meaning and the significance and the need to advocate and protect and honor human rights, not only here in Bloomington, throughout the state of Minnesota, but throughout the world. And at this time, I'd call on my fellow commissioner for his few words.
December 10th, 1948 was the day chosen to honor the United Nations General Assembly's adoption and proclamation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights arose from the experience of World War II and represents the first global expression of rights to which all human beings are inherently entitled. The Bloomington Human Rights Commission annually observes December 10th as the anniversary of this presentation and invites its residents to continue to work toward making Bloomington a model for fair and equal rights for all persons. Additionally, on behalf of the Human Rights Commission, I invite all school board members to attend the City Council meeting on December 2nd to honor Stephanie Hope Smith for her work with the Dakota Native American community.
Thank you so much. Next, I would like to ask Dan Heisman and the Born Again Jocks representatives to come forward now regarding random acts of kindness.
Well, Dan couldn't make it tonight. His wife is ill, so I'm standing in. My name is Bob Swanson, along with Jerry Narragon. Just a few words about our organization. The BAJs are Born Again Jocks. It's a bunch of older guys, 55 and older. This was started about 30 years ago. That like to stay active in athletics and other sports. And we hold a pancake breakfast once a year in October. It's our only fundraiser. We raise money for the high school senior athletes to give scholarships, $1,000 scholarships to. And we have a banquet and so forth every year in May. In addition to that, we've given money for the turf projects for the high schools and the Random Acts of Kindness. So we have a check for $3,000 here that we'd like to give to the schools again for the Random Acts of Kindness. Now this covers the athletics fees for the kids that can't afford it and other things. It's a fund for the athletics is where we earmark it for. And so on behalf of Jerry, myself, and all the other BAJ members, I've got a check here for $3,000. So as Dan would say, whoever wants it, come and get it.
And I think we have some people coming forward to get it. If we can hear from them.
Matt?
Just real quick. We'd just like to thank the Born Again Jocks. As a former teacher at Kennedy, we've seen them for the last, for me at least, the last 10 years playing volleyball. And these gentlemen are wonderful people and very kind to our schools and to our students, and we thank them for all their hard work. So thank you, guys.
And from Jefferson, a big thank you as well. We need all the help we can get, and we know athletics are really important for our students and our community, so thank you.
So is Deb Holman, Jefferson Assistant Principal, and Matt Hansen, the Kennedy Activities Director. Thank you for being here tonight and giving of your time to accept that contribution. And we especially want to thank the Born Again Jocks representatives and the entire organization for their continuing support of scholarships and other financial support for our schools. Thanks again. For the next item, I would like to ask Deb Belfry to come forward, please, in order to provide recognition to those who participated in our Take Your Child to Votes Day, and we have some information and some responses that we've had from participants in that in our election day on November 5th. Deb Belfry.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki. I am here again. It's our 14th year of the Take Your Child to Vote project, where we encourage teachers and students to talk about the rights of citizenship at this time of the year concerning voting in particular. This project is done in cooperation with the City of Bloomington, with City Clerk Janet Lewis. We had students that presented this project last week at the City Council meeting, and we have a student with us tonight. This project is paid for, the printing costs, the cost of the boxes, and students can also get their own voting sticker when they go with their parents to one of the 32 precincts to vote in Bloomington. But we have our students talk about and answer an open-ended question or an open-ended statement about, I am a good citizen when I. So rather than vote for just a single candidate, we have them talk about citizenship in their classrooms. So tonight, we are lucky enough to have a student from Olson Elementary, and my thanks go out to parents that bring our students to these meetings, to Paul Meyer, principal at Olson Elementary, for helping to coordinate and find the student to present tonight. And a special thanks every year to the city clerk, to the City of Bloomington, and to the Daymakers Rotary, who pay and cover the expenses of this program. So I will let this student introduce himself and read some of the responses and talk about his involvement with this project.
My name is Joshua Galvin, and I am in 5th grade at Olson Elementary. I was really excited when Mr. Meyer asked me to do this because I have gone voting with my mom since I was in kindergarten. We get up extra early and walk across the street to Bethany where she votes. I believe that I am a good Each year I fill out the blue citizenship slip that we get from school, and I think my answers have improved each year. I believe that I am a good citizen when I show respect for myself, for others, and the world around me. Some of the other responses that students wrote this year are, I am a good citizen when I give back to my community, abide by the rules of Bloomington, Minnesota, the United States of America, and the world, recycle, help others, respect others' opinions, and help stop bullying, donate to my school and other organizations. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's always very rewarding to have students represent this project, a small sampling of what we see and hear in our schools every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Joshua, for being here, and an excellent statement that you gave. Thank you for reading that for us. Members of your family that are here, and also the family then of Nwang, if you would stand up, please. I'd like to acknowledge your help, your being the driver tonight, and also supporting your children with their education. Thank you all. We're at the point of the agenda where I ask if there's anybody who came to address the school board on something that's not on our agenda. Now's your chance to speak. Is there anyone who'd like to address the school board? If not, I'll ask if there's anyone who is here for course credit as a requirement to observe a governmental meeting. Then we don't need to go over that tonight either. We can move right on to our agenda then. The Part A agenda then is open for a motion for approval.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the Part A agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approving the items of the Part A agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. And we move to the Part B agenda then. And item number 1 with Part B of our approved agenda is the fee increase for school readiness preschool program 2014-2015, and that is an action item. There's a resolution. And Director Bartolotta, if you'd read that for us, please.
Mr. Chair, be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves the proposed fee increases for school readiness preschool program.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded. And then Executive Director, Tom Holton. If he would like to give us a little more background, we have the printed information which refers to the fee rates proposed for the upcoming academic year. Director Holton.
Thank you, Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, members of the board. In your packet, you received the proposed fee increases for each of the preschool programs. A reminder, we bring those to you now, because believe it or not, it seems like the school year just started, but we're putting together our advertising materials for the 2014-15 school year right now that come out around the first of the year. So that's why we come for early approval. As the background information said, the last time we had a fee increase was in the 2012-2013 year. And as I often have to report, it's been 20-some years since our school readiness dollars that have come from the state have been increased. So as costs go up, the only way that we can continue the fine school readiness program we have for our public is to continually increase the fees to support the cost of operations. You got the schedule there, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? All right, hearing none, then I think we are prepared for a vote. Any other discussion required? Then all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and it carries. Thank you. Number 2 on our agenda is kindergarten 2014-2015 update. Facility information is the way it reads on our agenda. We have received some information in advance. Director Chris Lennox, our assistant superintendent, is going to be giving us some information about analysis of what our needs would be for expansion of kindergarten as we are considering at this time.
Great. Thank you.
Dr. Lennox.
Chairman Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, members of the board, in your packet, you do have a document outlining the facilities information for our kindergarten program. Page 1 of that document talks about the work of the planning team and the parameters that were used in creating a recommendation for the school board. Page 2 includes information about the additions and renovations that would be needed to accommodate the addition of all-day kindergarten. As you can see, there were no recommendations for additions needed at Hillcrest, Oak Grove Elementary, Valley View Elementary, Washburn, or Westwood. We are proposing renovations at Olson Elementary, Poplar Bridge, and Ridgeview. And we will need one classroom addition at Normandale Hills, as well as one classroom addition and renovation at Indian Mounds. The total cost of the projects was calculated at $2.5 million. And as part of our work, Rod Zivkovich, our Executive Director of Finance, has recommended 3 funding sources be used for those projects, specifically capital reserves, health and safety, and alt facilities. Those sources are listed in the last column at the bottom of page 2 in that document. This recommendation really represents the most responsible plan we felt we could develop to accommodate the space needs for the addition of all-day kindergarten. At this time, I would like to open it up for board members to discuss that. And as a reminder, we're not looking for action this evening. We will be bringing back a final recommendation on December 9th, but in the meantime, I'd be happy to take any feedback, bring it back to the committee and the planning team for consideration.
Hey, thank you. Director Bergstrom?
Yes, Chris, thanks for coming.
You bet.
Just a brief question. I'm looking at we're looking at renovation, Olson, Poplar Ridge, Ridgeview, and then addition to Indian Mounds and Normandale Hills. How much time is that gonna take?
Well, the sooner we can get going, the better, right? So we will go to, upon approval, if presented to the board in December on the 9th and it's approved, the additions need to go for review and comment to MDE. And as soon as they would approve those, Wold, who's our architect, would be working to try to begin, especially the additions. That's really work that would be attached, so it could start outside if at all possible and wouldn't affect inside the building. The renovations would likely have to happen when school's released over the summer months prior to getting back in the fall.
Do you think we'll be able to be ready to rock and roll in the fall?
We are hoping it will be a push. I mean, there's no question with construction, you never know. But it certainly will be our top priority with all of the projects that we have looking for us to make sure that those rooms are ready for students in the fall.
Okay, and then one last follow-up. If for some unforeseen reason we're 2-3 weeks late and we have a contingency for those.
Yeah, we've been working, as part of this planning, we met with every single one of our principals, our elementary principals, whether there were renovations or not, taking them through all, you know, kind of what's happening at your site, what would that programming look like. So especially for those schools that would have renovations or additions, we talked about what would be some alternative plans, what other space could you potentially use if we were slow getting going and getting those classrooms ready.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Director Ablin.
What would renovations include?
Depends on the school, and each one. So some of them are moving walls and making sure the spaces are ready for classrooms. In some cases, it's remodeling office space, you know, to move, because we're moving, repurposing programs. So programs that potentially would have been in a larger classroom, now we're moving to smaller spaces, and we're repurposing the larger space for a classroom of students. So from school to school, that varies.
Okay, thank you.
Director Bartoletta.
At our last meeting, when we discussed this, we talked about how there was a possibility that more kids would be coming from the west side for perhaps a half-day option. And we had, I don't know, someone mentioned perhaps going to Southwood instead of Pond, and I don't see Southwood mentioned here.
No, actually, on that document, the pond is only mentioned if you were moving forward with the half-day. There's no renovation necessary, repurposing of rooms, but no renovation. In conversations right now, Southwood is full. I mean, it is tight. We know we have room at Pond, so the recommendation of Pond on that would represent, if the board chooses the half-day option, that's really where we know we could fit it at this point with no additional additions or renovation. Yeah.
Director Hibbs.
I think the other thing that was mentioned at the last meeting was maybe the idea of trying to have 3 or 4 sites around the district with a half-day option. Has there been any consideration given to that and how that would change these space needs?
At one of the schools or at a different location, like Southwood?
You know, 3, 4 different places.
Three
or four.
When we looked at, the only way we could fit them into existing sites would be to add additional space. So that would be, of our schools, we would actually have to physically add more space to a school to be able to fit that additional programming in. When we looked at Southwood right now, especially based on some of the special education programming, we feel that's full. So unless we look for other spaces, right now, we're tight.
If our next agenda item moves forward, it's the hub.
Oh, okay, got it.
I think there was some discussion about possibly some of the space that's currently taken up at Olson Middle School might, maybe I misunderstood this, but might be moved to that.
Well, that's certainly something I can bring back to our planning team and take a look at. What we looked at with the, again, I'll go back to the programming conversation. We don't believe there will be 20 families in any one school to free up a classroom. So we're planning as we move forward space-wise that in each of our existing elementaries, we need to plan as if we'll need full-day classrooms for the number of students there. The only way we'd get an additional, even at a half-day, it would be another space, another classroom used only half a day, but a full classroom would be to add that space at an existing site. But I can bring that back to the team.
Yeah, I'd just like to know what the options are and how costly they might be, and I mean, if.
Yep, we'll make sure we get that
if
before
the cost is exorbitant, then
Yep.
that makes the decision, but, you know, we had some parents here last time, and
Correct.
I heard some sentiment there, and I'm I know I, as a parent, wouldn't want to put my child on a bus for 45 minutes when they're 5 years old to ride across the city, and, you know, I may have reasons why I want them only to be in half-day kindergarten, so I'd just like to have those options in front of us if we could.
Yep, we can do that.
Any other questions of Dr. Lennox at this time? Otherwise, I'll just say thank you for bringing that information forward at this time to bring us up to date on the thinking of your planning committee.
Thank you.
Anything further? All right, then let's move on to the next item. Thank you. Hub Properties, letter of intent. It says here Rod Zifkovich is going to present, but I see Neil Peterson approaching the microphone. So, Mr. Peterson, if you would give us an update here on where things stand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it.
I am here in place of Rod, or accompanying him, and we're here to ask you to recommendation for approval of the business terms of moving into the Hub building. We have negotiated the business terms, and we think it's a great opportunity for the district, and I think we need to move forward. The next step would be to have you approve a motion to approve it. We would then get the same approval for them, and we would move to a lease document, which we would then get to your attorney.
All right, thank you. Neil, so what is our action step? What's the timeline you're looking at when you'd look for the board to take action? Is this an action item tonight?
I think what I would like is have your approval of the business terms. That will then be set, we will sit down with the owner and we'll transform that into a lease document. These are never set in concrete until we have the lease document. So we have to get it into a document, and what we've tried to do with them is outline the terms of approval. It's a letter of intent. And this is where we are at this point. And once we get a lease document approved, we would bring it to your attorney, and he would bring it back to you for execution. The timeline could be as early as your next meeting, which is the 9th, I believe.
For final approval? That's a
I
potential.
believe if we can get a document done and approved by Mr. Holman and by the owner, yes. If
Then-
not, it'll be sometime after that.
Then would it be sufficient if I propose a resolution to approve the terms of the executive summary as presented?
Yes.
All right, so moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Has everyone had a chance to read this over? Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Director Hibbs?
For just two questions, actually. The gross rent that's specified in here,
Yes.
what's the going rate right now in this part of the city for that kind of a property?
Well, it would probably be classified as a Class B property as opposed to something at Normandale Lakes, which would be an A. They're over 20. But each of those buildings, they separate the utilities. In this case, this is a gross lease, which includes heat, light, taxes. This is everything. And so we did agree to the annual increase because we just know what happens to utility costs.
Okay.
And those terms and that rate is in our existing lease, the one that is, we're under right now, so we were able to hold those fees, costs.
Okay. And then with respect to the parking,
Yes,
at one time, were there some restrictions on how much of that lot Bloomington schools had access to at certain times?
well, Mr. Holman would probably better speak to that, but the lease goes back to, on the parking easement goes back to 1984. And there were some restrictions on use for weekends and evenings. And then when we did this new lease 3 years ago, then we had to put some language in there to have it meet the city parking code for building, which was predicated on square feet of usage. And so it stipulates a number, but we were told by the owner they were not going to police it. It was there basically because if other tenants were to come to the building, they had to have parking identified for them. We are now taking most of that building.
Okay. So,
It's a little ambiguous at this point, but it is gonna be more, it will be more clear if we get a new lease signed than it was in 1984. I mean, we've been living there a very long time, and it's worked fine. And we have to be careful about trying to articulate too far, because the owner is gonna be careful how they word that. So right now, we have a parking easement, and the parking easement that we signed originally is still affixed to the lease. It is still mentioned in the lease, right, David?
Well, even if it wasn't, it's filed on the property. The easement does limit the hours and weekends and certain times. But as Neil has pointed out, so far everybody's gotten along. But if they wanted to stand on their legal rights, they could limit our use.
So, moving forward then, who will be the anticipated tenants of that property?
Well, right now, we're hoping, I think they are hoping, it'll continue to be General Dynamics
And
the
Bloomington
district.
Schools and the Montessori?
and the Montessori.
Okay, thank you.
Director Bergstrom?
Yes, Mr. Peterson, thanks for coming. When I look at the 31,653 square feet that we're looking to gain,
Right.
that gives us room to stretch out a little bit. We're not gonna be crammed in there as soon as the paint's dry and the carpet's down.
I would have to look for your operating staff to assure that, but they have said yes, that it does work,
Okay,
and that there is some elbow room in there.
good.
There was a couple of spaces that we took into this lease to assure that we didn't have another tenant between the two spaces, so we absorbed it.
I know that we're kind of stacked up on desk right now, and I'd like to
Right.
tell those folks at least they have room to stretch out a little bit when we get into the new room.
And it's a very nice facility.
Good, thank you.
Are there other questions? Any further discussion before we move to a vote? Well, then I'll ask, all those in favor, please signify saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, and it carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much for being here. And our Executive Director of Research is at the table now for a report on our all-day kindergarten study. This is not a resolution item, it's an information item tonight. Dave Heisted.
Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujitake, and Board Directors. This will be a brief presentation, just 4 or 5 slides. Basically, we were able to put into place this fall an assessment for first grade for both reading and mathematics. And it has several purposes, but one of the purposes of that assessment is to evaluate the effectiveness of our kindergarten programs. And it was possible for me to look at the effects of all-day kindergarten this past year using the beginning of kindergarten assessment we give in the fall of kindergarten, and then the beginning of first grade assessment. It's a version of the measures of academic progress, the MAP, but it's called MAP for primary grades, MPG. It's on the computer, but it's scaffolded very nicely for young children. They do play with the mouse a little bit, move little objects from one part of the screen to another, and basically assesses their letter name knowledge and something called phonological awareness, whether they can hear the sounds at the beginning of words and at the end of words, etc. And it's a very good predictor of third grade reading. So it turns out to be a nice evaluation tool. So I looked at how many kindergarten students we had who were in half-day kindergarten, and that is on the screen at 291. We had 175 children that were in all-day kindergarten where they didn't have to pay tuition. They qualified based on poverty or English language learner status. And then we have this category of all-day kindergarten where parents have voluntarily chosen to send their children to all-day with tuition. And then there's a group of students that are intensive special education students, or early childhood special ed, and they weren't included in this particular analysis for this study. So what I did was I did a value-added analysis. We talked about value-added a few sessions ago. Basically what you do is look at typical progress for students from the beginning, pre-test, which was the fall of kindergarten, until the fall of first grade. And then you control for other factors that are correlated with achievement, but are outside the control of teachers. And in this case, I controlled for free and reduced price lunch status, English language learner status, and special ed status. I did that both for the reading assessment and for the math assessment. So this is very similar to kind of the match sample analyses we've done before, where you try to see how much learning took place, and then we make adjustments for the demographics of students that were in the program. The overall impacts of the all-day kindergarten are presented in something that's called standard deviation units. That's a statistical term that people don't tend to relate to very well, but it's used in the literature all the time for analyses of these types. The difference in reading was about 0.15 standard deviations, and it also was about 0.15 standard deviations for math. And that was statistically significant. And then the way you can think about standard deviation units is putting it back into percentile units. And we know that the 50th percentile would be where your child would be right at the average for the country. Half the students would be above and half the students would be below. If you place the half-day kindergarten effect at the 50th percentile, then the full-day kindergarten effect is like at the 55th percentile. So it's like moving a child from the 50th to the 55th percentile, from right at grade level to a little above grade level. So, and that turned out to be a large enough difference so it was statistically significant. We will follow up on this group to see if the kids that have all-day kindergarten maintain this advantage or whether it fades out. There's some research that suggests that all-day kindergarten effects may fade out over time. Board-elect Rick Oliva provided an interesting article to me this weekend, which was a large national study that suggested that effects may dwindle over time. And so we'll want to do the same kind of analysis and follow children forward. But the first year effect is substantial, and in that article as well, that's published in a national journal, they had about the same effect, about 0.15 standard deviations. So we have a similar kind of effect with our all-day kindergarten as was found in the national study. So I'd be glad to take any questions.
Director Hibbs.
So, I don't know if you looked at this, but would this data look different if you disaggregated by socioeconomic status? Because somewhat like you're alluding to, I read an article sometime in the last 6 months in one of the school board publications that we got about a study where all-day kindergarten had greater benefits to kids in lower socioeconomic classes than it did for kids in higher socioeconomic classes.
Yes, Director Hibbs, I did a study like that in Minneapolis and found exactly that the children who were struggling the most in terms of literacy had the highest gains, and they tended to be students of color and students in poverty, whereas the white middle class students gained, but not as much as the kids at the bottom. I did look at this with our data as well. I looked at that group of parents that decided to pay tuition to have their kids go to all-day kindergarten versus the group that decided to go with half-day kindergarten. It turned out that the impact was more significant for math than it was for reading, whereas the overall findings had about a balanced effect for math and reading for all students. In this case, the parents that had enough funds to be able to pay for tuition, actually, their children saw more growth in math. But it was significant in math. So I was kind of surprised by that because my previous study in Minneapolis had suggested minimal effects for the kids at the top. So I've always said that these kinds of things all depend on what you do with the time. So what you do with the full day kindergarten will have an impact. And if teachers are providing extra enrichment in math areas as well as reading, they may see, even greater benefits in math. So this is not, this is not a full-scale longitudinal study yet. What we need to do is follow up on these students across time. But the impacts seem to be similar to what I saw in Minneapolis and what the national findings saw for the first year effects, that children are more prepared for first grade if they have all-day kindergarten.
Jackie Bergstrom?
Yes, David, thanks for coming. I'm looking at a slide where you're showing the statistics for half-day numbers, all-day numbers. Just kind of curious, do you know for the half-day kindergarten, do you know how many of them are morning versus afternoon? And if the numbers show a preference?
That's a really good question. I should follow up in future analysis to look if there's a difference between afternoon and morning. My guess is there probably wouldn't be, but it's worth looking at. Yes.
Right. I know that when our kids were that age, there seemed to have been a preference for one half of the day. I'm sorry, I can't remember which it was, but I don't know if this will have an impact on our decision for half-day.
Right, that's a good question. I don't know if one is more popular than the other. That would be a good thing for me to follow up on.
Great, thank you.
Are there other questions or reactions to the data we have here? If not, I'll thank you for the report.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you on the topic. Thank you so much. And then back to the table is Chris Lennox, our Assistant Superintendent, has information to share. And food for thought, success measure, strategic directions B and C tonight.
Perfect. Thank you, Chairman Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, and members of the board. Tonight I am here to share information about success measures B and C. The purpose of our presentation this evening is to share results from last school year, the 2012-2013 school year. To begin, success measure B is tied to the development of educational programs in response to research, best practice, and market conditions. There are 5 areas within this measure, and we'll take a look at each one of them individually to look at the results. The first area is the parent satisfaction survey. This survey is given every other year and came in last year with a baseline of 77.9% overall satisfaction. The next measure is our student survey, and while we remained in the baseline category, we did see an overall drop in student scores. The number of questions vary from about 25 questions at the elementary to about 32, I think, at the secondary level. We weren't able to identify a specific cause for the drop, but obviously some level of concern. We're looking at that, and we'll continue to watch that closely as we move forward. The third area is the measure of hybrid course completion. This past year, we had 482 seniors complete at least one hybrid course. That's about 66% of the graduates, down slightly from 499 students, or 70% in 2012. In the area of AVID, our AVID program, we had 86.7% of our students continue with the AVID program at Valley View Middle and/or Kennedy High School. Students can move between 7th and 8th grade. Some then move from the middle school from 8th to 9th, and some are from 9th to 10th. One thing I would say is that as we continue to grow that AVID program, we would expect to see more students engaged in the program and retained then in that program as we move forward. In the final area of strategic direction B, we actually measure the gap in student representation from diverse populations within our gifted and talented program. This past year, our gap was 16%. That's improved from 27% the previous year. Currently, we have 28% of our gifted and talented students who come from diverse population, whereas our district population is 44% diverse population. So if you look at the overall scorecard, this is what we look like. For the most part, we are at baseline in strategic direction B with growth in the area of the hybrid course completion. Then in strategic direction C, this really measures our staff feedback regarding their own staff development activities, and there are 3 questions that are repeated in 2 areas for a total of 6 measures in this strategic direction. So we'll break them down as we go forward. The first is the percent of staff who said they were able to acquire new knowledge based on the professional development, and that was 81% of the respondents saying they were able to acquire new knowledge. 82% was the measure the prior year. Then they were asked the number of them who said they were able then to incorporate that new knowledge into classroom practice. 81% said they were able to do that. It was 83% the prior year. And finally, the question was asked, of those of you that were able to incorporate that, how many of you felt it had a positive impact on student achievement? 81% of the respondents believed it had a positive impact, as opposed to 83% in 2012. The next 3 slides then actually take those same 3 questions and disaggregate the professional development that was done specifically in the area of working with diverse populations. So first is the number of respondents. 72% said they were able to acquire new knowledge and skills in that particular area. This is baseline data, so we don't have a comparison. This was the first year that was actually disaggregated or pulled out of the overall professional development specific to working with diverse populations. The next area then was how many of them were able to incorporate that new knowledge and skills, and stayed at 72%. And finally, how many of them felt it had an impact on student achievement? Again, 72% of the respondents said they felt it had a positive impact on student achievement. So the overall scorecard, if you will, in this area puts us at growth and baseline in our professional development activities for the past year. And that concludes the report on strategic direction B and C.
May I lead with a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
Please, Dr. Lennox, what is the level of participation we have from parents and from students? What's our N with that?
Oh, great question. I'm hoping I have that in my file. In students, it's students in grades 5, 8, and 12 from across the schools. For parents, I'm trying to see if I have that. If I don't, I can certainly get you that.
And the students' response, are we, close to 100%? Everybody turns it back in class, or?
You know what? We don't have always 100%, so we can go back through that and disaggregate that by school site. So, obviously we try to get 100%, but we do not always have 100%. And I apologize, I do not have this parent N with me currently. I can look that up and get that to you.
Just wondered, maybe approximately what it might be, how many parents were surveyed?
It's actually
how many
online. I can
responded?
have it for you right after I get back to my computer, but I don't have it in front of me right now.
And then I'm honing in also then on the AVID program. I like AVID. I've seen Avid be very successful where it's well implemented and people are acquainted in classrooms other than Avid classrooms about how to encourage students to use Avid. Are numbers limited in the Avid program by students willing to take Avid courses, or is it limited by our staffing, or why is that number what it is for the number that are participating?
There are some limits put on that. Certainly the participation, we need to have both, as you've described, staffing and interest. First year, a little hard to generate both. You know, we have to send folks off to get trained, and we also don't want to train more than we have students interested. So that our first year, our numbers were smaller. We've seen them grow last year, and they're growing again this year. In addition, you know, we're looking, and that's generally been an east side, Valley View Middle, into Kennedy High School. But as we've done that too, we've looked to our gifted and talented programming, and you may recall the presentation by Principal McGrath and Aaron Boltic for the Nobel program there as well. We're certainly targeting programming to students to push their interests and have them pursue further education. And Avid has been very successful and continues to see growth in our East Side schools.
So what would be our vision for the coming year? Are we looking to expand that program by a certain percentage, or are we recruiting students into it? How are we working with it?
It's already
we consider it successful?
Yeah, it already is bigger this year. Remember, these are last year's results. So I could go back and send you the numbers, and we've already seen increases in the program at both middle and high school levels.
And to me, that would be as important a figure as the number that are retained, although that also is an important figure, would be the way we're expanding it and then retaining students within that program. And then perhaps even what is it we're looking for them to change in terms of their performance because of participation in Avid. If we're tying that into college and career readiness, or we're tying that into test scores or other kinds of grade point achievement, or how do we judge the success of that program? As I said, I've seen where Avid is not as successful because it's not really, to my view, being taken seriously as an academic improvement program so much as an alternative path for certain kinds of students. You understand what I'm saying? That doesn't make them more successful, it just segregates them in another way.
Yep, great points. So thank you very much.
Okay, I defer to other board members and Director Hibbs.
Just sort of a philosophical question. And I don't know how much you've had an opportunity to be involved in the development of these measures, but an awful lot of our measures are lagging measures. And I'm wondering if there's been any discussion about how we might have some leading measures included here too.
Great. This is almost a perfect segue. As we move forward, one of the new pieces of legislation is the world's best workforce. So we will be looking at indicators specifically in 5 areas as we move forward. So we will have to adapt what we're measuring and what the board should expect to be looking at for your dashboard about our performance. And those 5 areas are students ready for kindergarten. They are students reading at grade level by 3rd grade, graduation, and then career and college readiness. In addition, for all of those areas, the expectation is to close the achievement gap for race, poverty, and special education. So yes, we will need to do some forward looking and not looking back to be able to pull that together, plan, and bring you information. This is the change year. So in the past, we've looked back. The annual report was always looking behind us. How did we do? Effective going forward, that will shift, and we will now be looking ahead. But that is a significant change in legislation that will change the way we look at those. So great segue. You're right. We need to be looking ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Director Bergstrom.
Yes, Chris, thanks for coming again here. I think you answered my first question, but I'll go back here. The student satisfaction survey, you had mentioned that you weren't sure why there was a drop. Do they have a comment field where they can just sort of ad lib and say, I'd like to see more of this, I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah, we don't have that. We've had our principals go back, though, and do some postmortem, if you will, and look and say, what can we learn from those results and try to speculate. We've talked about in the future, if we're going to use survey data, perhaps even being able to run some focus groups, after, find out what's that, get more detail. But right now, there is not a comment field. They simply respond.
Is it a digital one? Do they do it
Yep.
online? Okay.
Yep.
So they're anonymous?
Yes.
Okay.
Anonymous
At
data.
least that,
Yep.
that helps. And then I'm looking at the student retention for the AVID program.
Yes.
It says that 65 of 75 students continue with the AVID program at Valley View Middle and/or Kennedy.
Yep.
Any idea where the 10 went that didn't continue?
Sometimes it's mobility. I don't have that in front of me. Sometimes students move in or out of schools, and sometimes kids just, it wasn't for them. They just chose to move on or take different courses, didn't choose to continue in that path of AVID. What would be interesting, as I said, we're seeing more students choose into that, and as we have bigger numbers, we're anticipating more retention. That was really what you were looking at, is year 2 of the program, and as it becomes more established, we feel like we'll see more retention, better retention.
It's just, when I went and spoke to the kids that, every one of them was sitting up straight, asking great questions, bright, active, engaged, and it just looked like something that was, it really resonated with them. I know it wasn't because I came to speak to them. It was, they were happy to be there before I walked in. So, let's see. One last one for your staff development. Is that instructional staff that you're referring to?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're talking about the people, the teachers that are in the classroom.
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions, comments, suggestions? Then we're set to move on to the next item. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Appreciate the report. Item number 6 is our approval of 2011-2013 negotiated contract between Bloomington Independent School District and Health Services, Bloomington Federation of Teachers, our Executive Director of Human Resources, Bruce Pappas. And we have a motion to begin our session here. And we have further motions too on some further contracts and discussion items related to our working relationships with our employees. Director Bergstrom, your motion.
Yes, I'm pretty sure I have the right one here. Be resolved that School Board of Independent School District 271 approve and ratify the 2011-2013 master contract between Independent School District 271, Bloomington, Minnesota, and Health Services, Bloomington Federation of Teachers.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Pappas?
Chair Culver, board members, and Superintendent Fujitaki, listening audience, and members in the gallery behind me. It's been a long time. We've been waiting for this one. This contract settlement was for 11-13. It was an expired contract. We started negotiating, I believe, in May of 2012, after almost a year to when the contract was already expired, so it took us an additional year plus to get to the point, 17+ meetings. During that time period, we also negotiated the 13-15 contract, which we have not reached an agreement on, but at least we reached agreement on something that was long past due, and long hours spent on negotiating this contract. As you would see, basically salary improvements are 0 for the first year, 2% for the second year. So that was for 11-12 and 12-13, and an additional lump sum payment. All the other things that were in that contract basically had been agreed upon, for the most part, with the other labor groups, and approved by the board almost a year or over a year ago. So it's with great pleasure that I actually bring this one to you, and hopefully the 13-15 will be on this tail.
Is there any board discussion? Then we'll move to the vote for approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Carries. Thank you. Item number 7 is approval and ratification of the 2013-2015 master contract between Independent School District 271, Bloomington, Minnesota, and the Bloomington Principals Association. Mr. Pappas.
Yes, again,
Wait a minute,
this-
let's get the motion on the table.
Okay.
Okay, Director Bartolotta.
Mr. Chair, be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District Number 271 approve and ratify the 2013-2015 master contract between Independent School District 271, Bloomington, Minnesota, and the Bloomington Principals Association.
Second. Moved and seconded. Mr. Pappas.
Thank you again. The number of meetings with the principals this round of bargaining, we started with some informal negotiations with I started with their chair, Brian Engelman, and we had basically just 2 meetings with our full groups. The parameters for this, or the settlement, is within the parameters that the board has authorized, which is 1.5% on each of the years. And then in general, there were housekeeping issues. There will point out one thing on here. There was a performance pay program which was adopted, which corresponds in its outline, its structure to the Q-Comp program that the teachers have at this point, and that will begin also this year.
Discussion. Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries. Item number 8, approval of 2013-2015 Community Education Independent Hourly Wage and Benefit Plan. Director Bush, would you like to make a motion?
I move that the School Board of Independent School District Number 271 approve the 2013-2015 Community Education Independent Hourly Employees Wage and Benefit Plan.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Mr. Pappas.
Again, thank you. Just for the listening audience, so that they have a good understanding of what's happening here. Obviously, we've taken care of one contract that wasn't presently. It was actually past due, and with health services, we've done the current contract with the principals, and usually around the time when the principals or teachers settle, we then move to the independent employees who are not covered by a bargaining unit, not covered by a master contract. And that's a plan that the board approves. It was developed by HR. And there are 2 sets of employees that we're going to be dealing with plans tonight that they're not subject to negotiations, but they are subject to board approval. The first one are the community ed hourly employees. There's mostly Kids Safari, their after-school programs, some of their adult enrichment, the youth enrichment, things that aren't covered by the teacher contract. These don't require licensed teachers or licensed employees. And so we place them all under the community ed. They're placed under the community ed umbrella, and then they were brought together in this plan. So following the principal settlement, which was 1.5% on each year, we have the opportunity this year to actually make it a 2-year plan. Usually we make it only 1 year. This year we made it 2 years because we have my board parameters, obviously. Then also you approved in the spring the health insurance contributions and the health insurance premiums for the next 2 years. So we're in an unusual opportunity here where we can actually have a plan that's good for 2 years. And so that's what you have before you. In general, the rest of the changes in the plan have to do with health savings account adjustments and premiums and those kind of things we just discussed. Otherwise, there's nothing new in this plan except those things.
Board members, any questions, comments, debates? going to move to the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries. Number 9 is our approval of the 2013-2015 salary and benefit plan for independent salaried employees. It's not independent community education employees, but independent employees. Director Hibbs.
Resolved that the School Board of Independent School District Number 271 approve the 2013-15 salary and benefit plan for independent salaried employees.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Pappas.
Again, nothing new to report here. Again, this follows the principal settlement in the plan that you adopted in 2011 and we updated in 2012. We basically attach the base salary to the principal's, the number that's in the principal's contract. And since we have the principal's contract, you just approved that, we can obviously approve the independent salary. This has to do basically with any employee who's not outside community ed, who's not covered by a contract. The Office of Educational Equity have a number of employees, technology. There are a few other people around the district. And then all the management is included in this plan. Again, this is within the board parameters that we've set, or that you've set previously.
Discussion. Seeing none, we'll move to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries. Our next item is the approval of 2013-2015 wages for athletic event workers. Motion, Director Bergstrom.
Yes, be it resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 271 approves the attached wage schedules for athletic event workers for 2013 and to 2015, effective January 1, 2014. The schedules reflect a 1.5% increase each year.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Pappas.
Again, thank you. Several years ago, it must have been 2 contracts ago, could have been as much as 3, 5 or 6 years ago, the athletic event workers were moved from the teacher contract because in general, these are, in the past, it used to be mostly teachers doing this. And we always encourage having teachers at our programs. Obviously, it's good for the kids, it's good for the teachers to understand what the kids are doing outside of school. So it's not the fact we don't encourage that, but we moved it outside because these are more of an independent employee type situation, hourly. And that's what the schedule on the back of the motion is. It reflects in each of the cells a 1.5% increase each year.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there a need for discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And it carries. Number 11 on our agenda, reserve teacher wage increase. There is a motion. Director Hibbs.
Mr. Chair, resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 authorize the full-day beginning wage rate for reserve teachers to be $115 per day for the first 40 days, $120 per day after 40 accumulated workdays, and $130 per day for Bloomington school retirees effective January 6, 2014.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Pappas.
Again, thank you very much. Just a little bit of background. Every year we evaluate what we're paying reserve teachers as compared to the surrounding districts and competitors. And then obviously we also have the reserve teachers who come in and tell us also. We always want to have the best reserve teachers we can have because of teachers being absent from the classroom for sick leave and other unforeseen elements, plus things that may have been planned, such as some of our professional development. And so this increases of $5 on each of the categories that you just read. Previously, currently they are at $5 short of the amounts that here. And just to kind of give you an idea, we are moving to a new sub-program next year. So these are some of the things we're thinking about. It's called ASOP. And most of the districts around us use ASOP. And so when a teacher logs in, they can see all of the possible schools that they can sub for in the area. So if we're not in a competitive range for those, obviously the people that we have coming here at this point could choose to go someplace else. So it's always good that we encourage and pay well our reserve teachers. Many of them also have a second tier, which is for a number of days that they teach in the district, and we become competitive with that by this change in that daily rate.
All right, any questions, comments? All right, then we'll move to the vote. All those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and it carries. Item number 12, deletion of policy 428, physical examination requested by the superintendent is the title of that item. Someone care to make the motion? Director Bergstrom.
Yes, be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 deletes the policy 428, physical examination requested by the superintendent.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Pappas.
This is the last of the motions that are coming for you from my department tonight. I thank you for indulging me. This deletion, I've been waiting to delete this policy for a while. I've conferred with legal counsel on this one. Even though the policy reads physical examination requested by the superintendent, the policy actually reads required. So that the superintendent could ask any employee, according to this policy, to have a physical or a psychological examination to assess their fitness for duty. Once a person is employed in any place, any employer in the state of Minnesota, it's illegal to ask or require, not ask, but to require anybody to undergo a physical examination. And this is by the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. So we now have all employees covered under a plan or a contract. So this policy is no longer needed, and so we can delete it. We frankly haven't been using this policy for years. And let me just tell you the intent. It may sound kind of interesting or a little bit strange. Usually when a person struggles in the workplace, many people see it. Management see it, their colleagues see it. And a kinder way to deal with that kind of situation is to try to point it out to them in some way. Ask them what's going on at home, ask what's going on in their life. And then at that point in time, I think the kinder way of looking at this is to always say, well, we don't know how much of your work performance, that's usually what's happening, there's a performance problem at work, is attributed to the problems at home, and how much of it may be attributed to just the performance issue of the human, the person, of the employee. So what we ask is we'd like to try to figure that out. I think it's to your benefit for you to know and for us to know, so we can request that they have a physical examination, either physical or psychological examination. The district pays for that. It remains very private. Obviously, those things are medical records, and they're sealed within HR. And then we can make a better determination. So the deletion of this policy is to get rid of the word basically require, because we shouldn't be requiring, nor legally should we require anybody to undergo a physical or psychological examination. But many times they do, of their own accord, agree to an exam.
Thank you for that explanation. Are there questions now? Is there discussion? If not, we can move to a vote on this first reading then.
Actually, I believe for deletion, you don't have a first reading. I believe it's just one reading.
All right, thank you for the correction. Then we are able to delete by a simple vote tonight. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries. Thank you. We've reached the end of our scheduled agenda for Part B. However, I have additional information related to the report. We heard a little bit earlier, success measures. I've been handed the data that we have had this year. 2,299 parents took the district survey. So that's our end of those who replied. And that's what the number is based on, almost 2,300 parents. All right. Time for board committee reports. If anyone has something they'd like to come forward to in regards to their duties as a school board member, let us know. Director Bergstrom.
Yes, thank you. Just three things on tonight. Had the opportunity to attend a parent advisory council meeting. let's see, we have some fun things coming up for those of you watching at home and want something to do with your little ones. Just missed the movie night. Santa photos are coming up. I think that's full. Am I right there, Heather? Disney on Ice, there's a lot of fun things that happen over at Pond Center. So Parent Advisory is the one that makes those things move. So we thank our Parent Advisory Council. Also had a chance to attend a CCAC meeting, Special Education Community Advisory Council. They're looking for 2 or 3 more parents that would be interested in meeting there. If you have any interest and you're listening at home and you want to know who to get in touch with, you can write an email to Eric Melby and he'll get you squared away. Also had an opportunity to attend the spaghetti dinner over at Kennedy the other, I think that was Friday night. And that's a fundraiser for the choirs. And so the choirs sort of serenade everybody for a 2.5-hour block of time. And it's really a really good deal. There's a silent auction there, raised a lot of money for the Bloomington middle school and high school choirs.
Other board member reports. Director Hibbs.
Mr. Chair, since our last meeting, we had a Labor Management Committee meeting, and I think perhaps the most significant part of that agenda was that John Weiser and Katrina Mazzara came in and talked again about the technology plan, and the representatives of the bargaining units certainly have a lot of questions about kind of how that whole technology plan is going to be implemented. So I think it was good for John to hear that and understand that there's a lot that folks want to know as we move forward with that.
Okay, thank you. Director Bush.
The MSBA Delegate Assembly is coming up on December 6th, and they always have a pre-meeting locally, so I attended that last week, and most everybody was there from the metro area, so that was great meeting.
Hey, thank you. Other reports? Then let's move to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Fujitaki.
Good thing. Our practice has been, because of the holidays and winter break, is to have one board meeting in December. We have one scheduled for the 9th. Therefore, administration requests a motion to cancel the board meeting session scheduled for December 23rd.
So moved. Second.
Motion to cancel our board meeting on December 23rd. Is there any need for discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Second topic is the HR director. Our district has hired a new HR director, Mary Burrows. She's currently the HR director in the Austin School District. Bruce Pappas, our current HR director, is retiring at the end of next month after serving the district for 7 years. And Mary Burrows will be introduced to the school board on December 9th, at the December 9th board meeting. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Is there any other business needs to come before this board at this time? Then we've come to the end of our meeting. Meeting adjourned.